Hi, everybody, and welcome to Observing with Webb, where a high school astronomy teacher tells you what you're looking at, why it's so cool, and what you should check out later this month at night. Don't forget to check out my Podbean page, mrwebb.podbean.com. You're watching this on YouTube, but I have other stuff up there as well, and also my Twitter feed at mrwebbpv. And you can get this as a podcast on Stitcher and iTunes. Just search for Observing with Webb. But anyway, welcome to March of 2019. We've got a great morning lineup in the beginning of the month. We have all the naked eye planets are visible at some point during the month. And also, we have a great lineup at the end of the month. And that's really making March a great morning planetary astronomy month. Here I am in the Pequea Valley Planetarium, a new area because, well, it takes me a while to get these things together, and I'm doing this at the last minute. But anyway, take a look up here. We've got some planets to talk about.
Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn.
So which planets can you see at night? Well, you got to get out after sunset, and there's two you might be able to catch. Let me start off with the highest one and the easiest one to find, and that would be Mars up here. Mars is going to be up there in the southwest, and it's going to be up there until about 10:30 or so at night. And it's going to be up there being very red, brighter than its surroundings, and in Aries. What's going to happen throughout the month is Mars is actually going to travel up toward Taurus, and hopefully in, what's the next month? April, it'll be up there in Taurus, looking really cool. But Mars is up there, not too bright, pretty neat. The cooler one, or the more rewarding one to find at the beginning of the month, is Mercury. Now, Mercury is only there for about the first week. So I had this set for sunset, but I went a little bit past, and watch what happens throughout the first week. One night, it's about 10 degrees above the horizon, and then it gets a little lower, a little lower, a little lower, and then it dives down below the horizon. So you'll only be able to see Mercury in the sunset for about the first week of March. Anyway, so that means you can see Mars and maybe Mercury during that first week. All right, so what about the other planets? Well, if we take a look at this green line here, which is the ecliptic, there's no other planets up there until, well, let's go through the time. Let's see, keep going, 9, 10, 11, 12. Jupiter kind of rises around 2 in the morning, between 2 and 3 in the morning. It's going to be very bright, and if you know your constellations and it's dark out, it'll be near Scorpius and underneath Ophiuchus. But I don't know many people who know about Ophiuchus. And then you'll also see Saturn below that rising a bit later, and Venus below that also rising a bit later. So let's talk about these morning planets, okay? You're going to see Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter. Let me go back to the 1st of March, and you notice that, well, let's get the moon out of there, okay? You'll see that Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter's pretty far off to the right. Now, what happens throughout the month is Saturn and Jupiter pretty much veer away from Venus, and Venus is sort of off to the left, and there's this big gap between Saturn and Jupiter. And that's fine. But you'll see these three in the morning throughout the month. Venus is going to be the very, very bright one, but low on the horizon. Jupiter is going to be the one that is bright, but not as bright, but far off to the right. And Saturn is going to be the less bright than those, but still brighter than the stars. It's going to be in the middle between those. And, what do you see here? Well, Mercury started popping up. Now, let me change the timing just a little bit and go to sunrise, and that's right at sunrise. Let me go back a little bit. Mercury is just above the horizon there for about the last week. So Mercury is actually a really interesting planet because what happens is it starts out the month by the sun as an evening planet, and then at the end of the month, it's actually going around behind the sun, and as it goes behind the sun, it reappears on this side of the sun. Oh, no, sorry, it's going in front. It reappears, and then we can see it in the morning as well. So anyway, Pretty cool. So don't forget, you've got Mercury, Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter in the mornings. Mercury only that last week. And I'm going to talk about how the moon sort of travels through there a little bit later.
And a bunch of other stuff. And a bunch of other stuff. And a bunch of other stuff.
All right, so what events do we have going on in March? Well, first of all, let's talk about the moon. We've got a new moon on the 6th, which means basically those first 2 weeks are pretty dark skies. And anytime after the 6th, you should see a very nice crescent moon after sunset. Then the first quarter moon is on the 14th, right at mid-month. So as the March Madness begins, you'll start seeing a first quarter moon, and then we'll have a full moon on the 20th. That's when it's visible all night and completely lit up. And then we also have the last quarter moon on the 27th. That's visible starting around midnight and into the morning. And then we start getting into some darker skies. And that leads us to some of the events, which aren't that many, but they are really cool, especially if you have a DSLR camera or even a cell phone camera. They can pick up some of this stuff too if you know how to use it right. But we start off the month by picking up where we left off with a morning lineup, okay? Now, this morning lineup technically started in February, but I'm going to go back to, let's go March 1st, okay? So March 1st, if you're looking here in the southeast in the morning, let's say it's about 6 a.m. In fact, I'll go a little bit earlier because the dawn really starts to break in earlier than that, I'm finding. But what you'll see is the moon and Saturn will be very close to each other. A very nice crescent moon here with Saturn just down and to the left. Now, I know these stars look bigger and brighter, but Saturn should be brighter than them. Saturn is down there with Jupiter way off to the right and Venus very bright and off to the left. And then what happens is on March 2nd, the moon travels a little bit further and is now actually closer to Venus over there. And then on the 3rd, the moon, oh, this is going to be real tough to see, but not impossible. The moon's way down here, very, very thin crescent, and bright Venus is up here. They're about 6 degrees apart. So if you hold 3 fingers out in front of you at arm's length, that's about the distance between them, okay? And that is really the event for the first week. The next event happens on the 10th. It is the daylight savings time beginning. Now, for those of you who haven't seen these morning stars, maybe it's still a little bit too bright to see them, stars, planets, this daylight savings time springing forward is actually great because when you do that, you get to see, you get a little more, you get out there an hour before the sun would actually rise. So this is actually quite helpful for those of you who have been missing that. Okay, so anyway, I digress. Then let's go to March 11th. And March 11th, not anything going on there. What's going on March 11th? Well, we have to switch and go back to our sunset sky. And we have to look toward the west. And what we'll find is a nice close encounter between the moon and Mars. As long as you get out after dinner, you should be able to see the moon and Mars up here in the west. And you'll see them, let's see, it looks like it'll be a crescent moon and beautiful red Mars. You might even be able to get them in one picture. And yeah, it's just going to be really nice. They'll be close together. So if you have trouble finding Mars, March 11th is the night that you want to go out. They're only about 6 degrees apart, which again is about 3 finger widths held at arm's length. Okay? And they will set around 11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Okay? Then on March 20th is the spring equinox. There's nothing to show you here, but it's really just astronomically the first day of spring. Even though I would think astronomically that should be the middle of spring, but that's another story. That requires graphs and visuals and stuff. But anyway, that is the first day of spring, and yeah, so check it out, 20th. And then lastly, we have another morning lineup, which again goes into April. So what time of day is it going to be? You guessed it, it's going to be in the morning. And on the morning of March 25th, if you go out at 5:40, that should probably be closer to 6:40 because of daylight savings time. But anyway, go out there when it's still dark on the 25th, and you'll see the nice gibbous moon way over here. Jupiter is going to be about 20 degrees to the left. Saturn is going to be to the left of that. Venus to the left of that, and Mercury you might be able to catch very low on the horizon as well. Now the planets are going to stay basically in the same spot, but the moon's going to pass through. And so let me move ahead and show you what's going to happen. So the moon actually gets closer to Jupiter on the 26th. Now they're only 8 degrees apart. The moon moves about 12 degrees along the ecliptic every day. And so you still have a really cool lineup out there. Then, the next day, the moon actually pops between Jupiter and Saturn, but is still pretty close to Jupiter, only about 4 degrees to the left. And then the next day, now the moon's closer to Saturn, right? I don't know how, that's probably about 10 degrees or so, something like that. And then on March 29th, now the crescent moon is actually pretty close to Saturn. In fact, it is 3 degrees down and to the left of Saturn. So that's probably like 2 fingers widths at arm's length. But then the following morning, the moon is in between Saturn and Venus, but closer to Saturn. Next morning, the 31st, a beautiful crescent will be almost halfway between Venus and Saturn, a little bit closer to Venus. And then April 1st, okay, let's refocus here, okay? April 1st and April 2nd is really the last day for this sort of thing. These might actually be hard to find because they are low on the horizon. Dawn is probably breaking, but I don't know. Find a very clear horizon and it could work for you, okay? So if you go to April 1st, Venus and the moon, very thin crescent moon, they will be only about 10 degrees apart. That's 1 fist width held at arm's length, okay? And then on the 2nd, this is going to be the hardest. I would be surprised if I could even find this, but I do have a place that I stop on my ride into school that has a very clear view toward the horizon, over lots of farmland, nothing in the way. I might be able to catch this. But you will see the moon directly below Venus. In fact, if we zoom in a little bit more, the moon will be directly below Venus by about 4 degrees, and Mercury will be over here, and that's going to make a really cool triangle. I would be very impressed if anybody got a really good picture of that. So that is the events for the month, basically just those 2 lineups, but it's happening at a time where if you are driving into work around 6 in the morning, maybe even 7 in the morning, you might actually see some of this. So get out there, take pictures, and share it with me.
Are there patterns in our skies? Are patterns only in our eyes?
So what constellations are out there? I'm not going to go too deep this time. In fact, if you go back to my February video, you'll see me talk about Orion up here in the southwest and Gemini up above it, along with Taurus and the Pleiades. So go back 1 month and find that. That's good for after dinner, and then before bed is Auriga and Gemini. But I want to take a second and I want to revisit something before work. So let's say before work is 5:30 in the morning, okay? So if we look at 5:30 in the morning, look to the north. We typically look south for what we've been doing lately, but if you look to the north, you should be able to find, actually northwest, you should be able to find the Big Dipper up here. And this is your last chance to get a good guidepost here with the Big Dipper. But if you find the Big Dipper, these 7 stars here, which are just an asterism of the constellation Ursa Major, you take the tail or the handle of the Big Dipper and you follow that arc to Arcturus. And that being the brightest star of Bootes, which is this big shepherd. It doesn't look like a shepherd. It looks more like a kite to me. Some people say it looks like a club or a baseball bat, whatever, make it your own. But you follow the arc to Arcturus, And then what you can do is speed on to Spica. Spica is the brightest star here in Virgo. Now, Virgo tends to be one of my favorites because the stars are dimmer, it's harder to find, but they are very beautiful. And the way it's set up really reminds me of the Dickinson Mermaid. So if you can find those three in the morning before you go to work, I count that as a success. But anyway, that is it for the month of March. Get out there and check out those planets at the beginning and the end of the month. Also, all throughout the month. They're still out there the whole month. It's just the moon comes in at the beginning and the end. And take some pictures, enjoy it, and I wish you very clear, dark skies for the month of March.